get to the bag, ayy. Got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when the lane moving fast, ayy. Let them all cross. If they hate, then let them hate and make a bigger boss, ayy.
This episode is brought to you by SPI Logistics, the premier freight agent logistics firm in North America. For over 40 years, SPI has been diligently building the most successful freight agent network to provide first-class relationships for our shippers, receivers, and carrier partners. We are more than another transportation network. We are a dedicated team of professionals united by one singular purpose, and that is to expedite our agents' success. All of our agents are set up for success on day one, as they are provided with a full suite of support staff that is ready to assist them with everything from after-hours emergencies to financial and administrative needs on a no-fee basis. This way, you can focus on continuing to grow your business. There is no financial risk to start, and you have the ability to earn up to 75% in commissions. If you are looking to take control of your financial future and build your business with the backing of one of the most successful logistics firms in North America, visit www.spi3pl.com to learn more. Do me a favor and let them know that the Freight Coach sent you.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. It's the Freight Coach podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. But most importantly, you guys provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I do say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak with transportation professionals, because at the end of the day, you guys, I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve. So you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. I got a very special guest for you guys here today. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. It's a non-AI company coming in to talk about AI today, you guys. We're going to hear, like, how do you deploy it? What do we do with all of this information? There's so much stuff out there. Where do you start? Is it worth it? Is it overblown? Where are we at? And there is nobody who is more qualified to talk about this than my friend, Ryan Schreiber. Ryan, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
man. Thanks for finally asking me to be a part of your podcast. Like for everybody else, I was giving Chris shit that it's 4 years or 5 years he's been doing this, and he finally asked me to be on. So I'm happy to do it, man. Thanks for joining. Thanks for having me.
Let's just clear some things up. The Zelle deposited this morning, so that's why we're here today. The payment,
good, yeah, the $7,500,
yeah, exactly. That's all it is, you guys. It's just a small nominal fee. Chad told me to bill you directly for that to make that happen. So,
yeah. That's good. Yeah, ABRL is really putting it on. So thanks, Chad, for sponsoring my seat here on the Freight Coach podcast.
Yeah, he doesn't realize it yet, but he will be getting an invoice for this later on today, and it'll be like per courtesy of Ryan Schreiber.
Correct. Yeah, that's correct. That's
so,
right.
dude,
that's right. That's right. I just said something to bill to him.
Yeah. Oh man. So what's good, man? What's new in your world? And and then talking about AI and everything. I think that I've had almost every AI company so far on the show. And, there's a lot of really good things that are out there. I'm very much like all about technology, automation where we can. But, a lot of it is it's that deployment. It's that, do I actually need it right now? What stage of my business am I currently in?
Yeah. So, just for context, Chris, like I've been working on AI and machine learning initiatives in logistics for about 10 years at this point. Mm-hmm. Back in 2016, I started a company called Freight AI, and we were building artificial intelligence use cases in logistics. So, it's something that I have been working on for quite some time, and longer than anybody else really in the industry. And so there's a lot of these foundational, well, the technology's evolved a lot, and certainly over the last couple of years with generative AI. So we didn't have generative AI back then. We just had we had chatbots, and we had other applications of machine vision and NLP and machine learning. But generative AI certainly has been a game changer, and it's changed a lot in the last couple of years. But I understand some of those foundational principles. I've been working on that for quite some time. And then with Metaphora, right? I mean, it's the topic of conversation. Metaphora does technology consulting for logistics and transportation companies. And then primarily, yes, Scott Watanabe, I'm at the Hard Rock. I'm playing blackjack on the side, buddy. I'm actually in Charlotte. I'm not going by Armstrong's office, but I saw Cam yesterday. So, So yeah, man, it's, we see the biggest companies in the space, working on AI initiatives. We're working with the biggest companies in the space on AI initiatives, and we're working with some of the the technology companies themselves on implementing for their customers and whatnot. And so there's a lot of promise. There's a lot of value in the technology over time. There are also a lot of challenges, and the real issue, one of the biggest issues for companies, at least making a selection, Chris, is it comes down to kind of the nuance that is in what's going to make one application useful for more complicated use cases, and which ones are going to kind of top out or hit a ceiling. And so on the front end of like selecting technology, that's certainly a big problem for people right now.
What do you think most people get wrong about AI? And, I want to, like, from a broker, like service provider's perspective, and then what is being overblown out there by the AI companies trying to sell it into the market. And I say that with kind of a little caveat of, like, if there's one thing that I have seen over the last 5-6 years in this industry is there's a massive influx in technology companies, all promising how they're going to revitalize the industry. And that really hasn't changed the landscape and the foundation of transportation yet, right? Like, I think that we're a ways off from that. But with that being said, what is being missed out there about AI right now, do you think?
Yeah, I think the number one thing that people need to kind of realize is that artificial intelligence has been around for quite a long time.
Yes.
And that it means more than agent AI or even generative AI. There's a lot of different ways in which AI affects and can affect your business. And generative and agentic AI is only one part of that. Machine learning is something I talk a lot about, and that's a big part of it too. But the other is that it is a fundamentally different application of technology to your business. And to get the absolute value out of it that you want to, it requires a different approach to technology implementation and business and implementation within the business than other technology does. I mean, everybody has struggled, like, with every application of technology. You need to review process, and you need to review operating model, and you need to do some foundational work there to do some changes in your business. But there's the power of this technology today, especially in the generative and agent space, is that you have to reimagine everything about how you want to do the job to get the most value out of it. And most companies have not been yet willing to do some of that. And so those are the two big things I want people to take away from the AI conversation that have been really challenging to kind of get through to people.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. Because I think, like, from a consumer standpoint, from somebody who sees a lot of this stuff being released out there, you see some of the marketing behind some of these companies, and it's stating a clear message of, hey, we're going to automate everything, we're going to make your life easier. And then, as a broker myself, who I've interviewed, like, I've demoed like a lot of these things out there, and the end thing is it's like, hey, kind of tether your expectations. We're not quite there yet. And the messaging out there, and this isn't directed at any one company or not. I don't play that game, but, like, I feel like as a consumer, I see a lot of message out there. So I resonate with what you're saying there, Ryan, is like, hey, people need to understand, like, it's not there yet. But I also feel like some of these companies need to tether their messaging out there, because it's like, you can't sell a bill of goods that we're going to come in and do this, and then when you're going through the demo and then the deployment phase, you're like, actually, we're not there yet, we need another 6 months, and then 6 months turns into another 6 months, and then another 6 months, and it's never there.
Yeah. And so Chris, the truth is the technology is there, actually. Like, it's capable of doing these things. There are three main reasons that they're not delivering on that brand promise.
Yeah.
The first is really business strategy and business logic. The second is data density. And the third is connectivity and kind of like system. What's the word I'm looking for? but
integration,
kind of having to deal with antiquated systems. The core underlying technology. Now there are some of the different vendors can deliver on the brand promise more or less than others, admittedly, and that's kind of what I was talking about earlier in terms of how they're architected and how they deal with like how much context they try and pack into a message and stuff that's kind of particularly esoteric for this type of conversation. But in general, like the actual underlying technology is there to deliver the types of outcomes and values that we're talking about. The real challenge in delivering those is actually within the four walls of the brokerage. And it's those three things. So business strategy and business logic, data density, and then connectivity are the three main reasons that people are really struggling to it. And I can go deeper into those things if you want me to, Chris. But the reality that's kind of, I think, a big part of the challenge is understanding that is really understanding what is holding some of these technologies back from being as successful in your business. But that having been said, I will say, Chris, that like no one that I talk to is getting true deep business value out of any of these implementations today. There are certainly people getting some business value and some incremental business value, but the transformational business value is not yet realized. And again, like some of that is definitely, or most of that is actually on inside the four walls of the 3PLs and the carriers.
Do you think, and I want to talk about connectivity. I want to talk about that, but I want to put something else out there as well, because one thing that I've kind of noticed is there's a lot of tech vendors in the AI space that are fighting. I personally think that are overlooking the biggest part of the market. I think a lot of them are like, hey, if you're not big, we don't want to work with you. And it's like, I mean, I just saw the TIA just released the other day, like 75% of brokers do 15 million or less, right? So it's like, do you think that some of these companies are missing the mark on where the real market is? Because not everybody is going to work with, we'll just Transport Topic releases the top 100 brokers and top 100 for-hire carriers every single year. Go down that list. The top 50 of them are probably building their own product at the end of the day. So it's like, are they really only fighting for 50 to 100 companies? Because then the drop off from a top line revenue perspective is drastic below that top 100 list.
Yeah. So, I also work as an advisor to freight tech companies, and I deal with this in my business at Metaphora, right? Here's the challenge. Are they missing a market opportunity? Kind of. But there's really two big problems with working down market in logistics. Mm-hmm. One is wallet share. And so there's only so much money that any company has to spend on any initiatives. Like I use the analogy a lot of times. It's like, if you promised me, Chris, hey man, I will give you $300 million in 6 months guaranteed. I'll put it in an escrow account right now so it's there. Like I can prove that it's there. It'll be there. It's an irrevocable, whatever. And you're definitely going to get it. You're absolutely going to get it. To get it, you have to give me $100 million right now. I don't have $100 million, bro. Mm-hmm. So like, it kind of doesn't matter that you can get me a $200 million ROI because I don't have $100 million to give you.
Yeah.
No matter how much you can prove it and how much I trust you, I can believe you. So wallet share is one of the problems. So there's only so much money to go around. And as you go down market, that gets exponentially worse. Yeah. Right. And so one of the challenges there is kind of, is there the money at these businesses to spread across all the interesting things that they want to do? Gen logs or highway, green screens, their own TMS, DAT, and then, something in the AI space, whether that's, whether that's this agent type AI or other types of artificial intelligence that are like data science related or machine learning related. That's one problem. The other problem is, honestly, it costs just as it's actually more difficult to deal with and sell to a smaller company. Mm-hmm. Like, so part of the problem is the brokers and carriers themselves that are smaller businesses, and like just how they buy and how it is to deal with them and get a deal done. And so sometimes going down market is just more difficult. So I would say that like these companies are willing to work down market. The more you can make it easy to work with you, and to get a deal done, the better it's going to be for you, because admittedly, like, it is actually more difficult to get a contract done with a top, a $15 million broker than it is a top two. I'm working on a contract right now with a top two broker.
Yeah.
And it's actually an easier process. It's an easier sales process. And it's taking just as much time as it has been or would if I was selling a $15 million broker. Those are kind of the challenges. So yeah, I mean,
do you think that in time there will be somebody who kind of comes, like, I'll call it, not that the Toyota Camry is a bad car, but like, you know how the Toyota Camry is just, it's reasonably priced, it's nice, and it's very, very reliable. Yeah. Do you think that in due time, technology will kind of expedite up there to where it's like, hey man, we have like this account, we've developed the technology, we've ironed out a lot of this stuff. It's going to cost $500 a month. Hypothetical example, ladies and gentlemen, but $500 a month. There's your AI agent. It's going to come in and do all of that. Do you think that's going to happen? And if so, about how far out are we from something like that happening?
It's absolute, like, we're there now. We could be there now. Sure. I mean, there are so many of these companies, to your point. Like, I was actually talking yesterday, I was at the FreightWaves AI symposium or what have you. And every week I hear about 2 new companies minimum that are working on this problem. And so they're all going to need to find product market fit somehow. And some of these solutions are going to struggle with more complex use cases. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like, and there are companies now that, again, will sell down market. I think that the other part of it is, I think that smaller brokers and carriers, they don't need as robust tool set as bigger companies do. And yet they sort of like, they misunderstand. And listen, again, or for everybody who's listening who may not know my background, I've started 3 brokerages in my career. So like, I've had to build a company from nothing. Like, I know what it's like to be a $5 million, $10 million, $20 million, $50 million broker. And so, I did the same thing, and that I see everyone else doing, which is overestimated the complexity of my business and how robust the tool set I needed at any given time in my business was. And so those exist today. Looking at more point solutions as opposed to platforms would be a good place to start. So folks who are focused on a specific use case, and then look at other things for AI that aren't agentic or generative, really agentic as such. Like, look at back office situation. Like, look at your P&L and identify areas where you're wasting money. A quick story and then I'll stop for a second. But, there was one year where it was probably, it was the first or second year of one of the brokerages I started, and we did 15 million in top line revenue. We did $1.5 million in gross profit. And I took $20,000 to net operating income, only $20,000. And I looked at my, P&L, and I was parsing it at the end of the year. And God, where's the money to grow, And I had spent $500,000. I had spent a third of my overhead, my gross profit on SG&A for HR, track and trace, carrier compliance and onboarding, and billing and collections.
Yep.
That was a third of my. Like, there's real ROI there, and it doesn't need to be this sexy carrier sales. It doesn't need to be customer acquisition. Like, that was real money that if I could get access to, I could use to grow my business. I could use to invest in sales. I could use to grow revenue. So look in some of the non-sexy places, Chris, is where I think the low-hanging fruit is for, smaller brokers today, down market brokers today.
That is, like, I mean, you are honestly listing out, like, kind of my strategy of implementing technology and automation into my operations here, Ryan. It's a lot of the stuff behind the scenes. Like, and I say this on the show often, man. I'm like, 95% of my day as a broker should be automated. The 5% that I will never automate in my company is the customer experience and the carrier experience, because they want to talk to real people. So if you're one of those AI people in freight who are trying to do automated carrier sales, you're not going to get it from me. I'm not doing that. And from my perspective,
Chris, Sorry, go ahead, buddy. Go.
No, I
Finish
was
your
going
thought.
to say, from my perspective, there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes where I can automate to grow smart, right? Because like that's ultimately at the end of the day, Ryan, I need to build a war chest of funding while I'm scaling my business. I'm not, I don't have investors. I don't want to take on investors because I want to do this on my own. You can call me, people can call me wrong, whatever they want, but it is a lot more important for me to own 100% of Chris than it is to get a capital investment to possibly expedite 5 years of my life. And I look at it as there's a lot of roles behind.
I see it very similarly for what it's worth.
Yeah. And I just look at it, Ryan, as I'm like, man, there's a lot of stuff that I can automate behind the scenes where it's like, hey, instead of hiring 3 people for this role, I can hire 1, make them more accurate. And I can actually pay that one person more money than I would be able to if I needed to have a manual task and have 3 people in that role. And I look at that as, it's not Chris is trying to not hire people. On the contrary, I'm trying to hire the right people. So where if there is a down market, I don't have to look at you and be like, hey, I'm paying you too much money. You're out.
Yeah. So Chris, I think you're painting automation with a little too broad of a brush and talking about automating the carrier experience and the customer experience because they want to talk to a person. They do sometimes. What they really want is their problem solved quickly. And they want to be met where they are. So I'll give you an easy example. If a driver, it's 3:00 in the morning, the driver shows up to a delivery facility and he's like standing in line to check in and he goes, shit, I don't know what my delivery number is. He doesn't really care if he talks to a person. He just wants his delivery number really quickly. But he also wants to be met where he is, right? Which is why like kind of the download my driver mobile app doesn't work. So that driver's ability, and again, we're talking all about agents and generative AI, but that ability for that driver to call in quickly, get a bot on the phone and it gives him his delivery number and he can move on with his life like that.
For sure.
Is a significantly better experience than he calls you, you've got to get out of bed. There's a Transport Topics article that came out this week that quotes me saying this exact same thing. It's better. And then you having to get out of bed, turn on your computer, get into the TMS, call him back. It's 15 minutes. Like everybody's better off for that experience. I got to stay asleep and the driver got the information answered for him. And, and so I do think that painting automation with too broad of a brush, that there are things that we aren't going to automate or that we shouldn't automate, right? Which is like, I used to call my customer. There was one customer, he's still a good friend of mine to this day. And like, I would call and do an NFL pick-in with him every week. Like we literally would do that. That's the real relationship. I'm obviously not going to automate my NFL pick-in with him, but I can automate the rate quote. I can automate that. If he wants that, if he opts into it, if he doesn't. And if he doesn't opt into it, I should price in my time. My time is very valuable. Right. Yeah. That's why you're paying me to be here. We talked about this out. That's why you're paying me $7,000 to be here, just to bring that joke back. But, it's my time's really, really valuable and it should be paid appropriately, right? It should be compensated for. So if you're going to make it difficult to do business with you, if you're going to require me to call you on the phone to give you the rate quote, those types of things need to be priced into the freight opportunity because I actually do pay for it. I pay for it below the line. Brokers' P&Ls are deceptively simple in ways that actually hide a lot of the cost of doing business with a shipper and in ways that I think are really damaging if you don't really dig into it. But yeah, Chris, I think I agree with you. There's parts of it, or I agree with you in part, right? There's parts of it that you absolutely don't want to automate, shouldn't automate, never automate. But I do think I see brokers frequently rather paint automation with too broad of a brush, and you really need to break down what's the situation, and what are we trying to accomplish, and what's the best way to do that, and where do people want that, and then how do I make sure I meet them wherever they are? If they want it by email, if they want it by phone, if they want it by SMS, or they want to be, if they want to be talking, if they want it by fucking carrier pigeon, like great, let's meet them where they are and get them that, and then price it in.
Do you think people in freight are painting AI with too broad of a brush because they've been told that it is way more capable than it actually is out there in the market? Because like I see where you're coming from, Ryan, 100%. And there, like you do bring up a good point, right? Like that automated, hey, what's the delivery number, stuff like that. Like we don't have enough time, but I could go down the argument that like a real broker would have made sure that driver had that information prior, yada, yada, yada in form. But I look at it is we're at a point where I think one of the big struggles that AI companies are going to see over the next 2 to 3 years is they are going to have to fight against AI tools that are out there in other facets of a person's life, and they're going to instantly make that correlation. Because a lot of people, when if you've ever worked in sales, your prospect tends to kind of make up their own story on what they think you're saying is. And I feel like it's on you as a sales rep and as a company to make sure your messaging is crystal clear on what your product is actually able to do.
Right. Yeah. Yes. I mean, I guess I agree with your underlying point.
Yeah.
I don't think that I really push back on the over-promising piece of this, because it really, again, like the biggest reason that brokers struggle, the number one reason, as I said earlier, it's like business strategy and business logic. Like these companies, I mean, even the biggest companies in the space, they struggle to pull out the complex business logic that goes into their decisioning. It's what you would call implicit, right? Like it's that institutional knowledge that's just like, well, I just know what to do. I just know what to do. Okay, but to think about, agentic and generative AI, like, and then actually really like any types of machine learning, like you have to know the information to get good outcomes. Like you have to train literally, like everybody talks about training models, but like you have to train a human just like you have to train an AI model. Yeah. And the information has to be available. Like imagine I came to you and I was like, Chris, I want you to quote me on a shipment. Okay, well, where's it pick up and where's it deliver? I can't tell you. Okay, well, when does it pick up and when does it deliver? I can't tell you that either. Well, how long of a transit is it? Yeah, it's like, I don't know, it's somewhere between like 600 miles and 6,000 miles. Okay, what's the commodity? What's the equipment? If you can't answer any of those, if you can't answer, the more of those questions you can answer, the better results I can give you. And when I talk about things being implicit, sometimes things aren't available to these applications. That goes to the data connectivity and data density and some of the other stuff. Some of these things aren't available to the applications in a way that allows them to deliver the business value you're describing. Now, I do agree that at some level, like as a salesperson, if you really kind of, or like as a company, like you want to disqualify customers as much as you qualify them. I walk away from customers sometimes that I don't believe will be successful working with me, and with Metaphora and with other businesses that I have. But at the same time, like Chris, if you bought some bullshit, you got sold. Like that's on you. Like their responsibility is to try and sell. Like they're trying to sell their product, and like they should care, quote unquote, that you're going to be successful. But really, like the world doesn't work on should. This is capitalism, as a lot of people like to point out all the time. So like it's on you, bro. And so, yeah, man, do your own due diligence. Are you in a position to articulate the business logic that's required? Probably not. Or the business strategy. Like how do you decide when to take a 9 p.m. delivery appointment, when you wanted 9 a.m.? Like sometimes you'll ask for a reschedule, sometimes you won't. Why? In what scenarios? If your systems can't connect to each other, do the due diligence to figure out what these applications need to be successful with you when talking to them, and then figure out if they can do that. Because if they lie to you, that's fraud, right? But if you didn't do your due diligence, which is what I see more frequently than not when people are upset about how the outcomes they got with technology, it's that they didn't do their homework. Mm-hmm. They didn't ask the right questions. They didn't ask the right depth and level of questions. And so then they didn't get the value out of it. So, I mean, I'm sorry that I'm pushing back so much on this concept of the technology's not there, because
Ryan, here's the thing. This stuff
it largely is.
Yeah. This needs to be said, because like nobody's asking these questions out there, man. And then they find themselves in that exact position you're talking about right here, where they feel like they got fucked. Yeah. And now they're sitting there and they're they're blaming other people because they never stopped to take 5 seconds to be like, hey, where am I at in the business? Do I actually need this? Why am I signing this contract? And, again, man, you're right in your stance here of like, hey, sales reps are there to sell. If you got sold, that's on you. But again, this is the entire premise of the show, right? Ryan. This is where real conversations need to be had, because like we need people to think about this stuff outside of how they're currently thinking, because otherwise, man, one thing that, again, it's not my responsibility to feel bad for people, but I'm a human being. I feel bad when I hear from people who are like, yeah, man, I got fucked out of $30,000. And, you know, like as a business owner who's bootstrapping, it pains me to hear that. And that's why I'm like, I want to have these conversations on this show, because hopefully somebody hears this, Ryan, and they think about it differently when they go into that next demo.
Yeah. So, you know, bro, like, it's not just about AI, man. This is like Beauty and the Beast. It's a tale as old as time. Like, this is the story of people picking technology for quite some time. And admittedly, like, it's the entire reason that I have a business, because people need help picking technology. They need help building technology. They need help implementing technology. So, I mean, the key is part of what you just said. Why do I need this? Why do I want this? What am I trying to get out of it? Chad, we talked about Chad Olson earlier. Chad and I have this conversation frequently that, like, he'll also walk away from customers that he doesn't believe will be successful with this product, because, you know, there is a FOMO element in freight tech where it's like, everybody else has this, I should get it. Now, I think that people also go I see people also go the other way of, like, rejecting stuff just for the sake of it, because they don't need to do it, because I still use fax machines and shit. But, like, you know, but the reality is, I also feel bad. I give away a lot of free advice. Like, I give away a lot of free work, because I want people to be successful. Number one, why are you doing it? Ask that question. What's the business problem you're trying to solve?
Yeah.
Not what's cool technology. There he is. You know, what's the business problem you're trying to solve? Why are you trying to solve it? And what's the best way to solve it? Here's the thing. Here's the other thing about AI, actually, that I want people to take away that they're missing. It's actually the worst. It's the worst. Worst is the wrong way to put it. It should be the last solution to many of these problems as it relates to technology. It's incredibly powerful. I love it. It is incredibly powerful, and it's so powerful that actually you should have tried everything else before you get to artificial intelligence or machine learning or whatever else it is. Because, you know, you see it in reporting a lot. Like, you could do a lot with machine learning, but you have to be able to ask really interesting questions that are different than you could get from a BI dashboard. And so it's probably the wrong way to solve the problem. It's just cool and sexy and seems neat and also seems easy. And there's ways in which it is easier than other technologies. And I actually wrote an article for TIA about this like 3 or 4 years ago, that natural language processing is kind of like the easy button solution to certain aspects. But, like, and then get into, what do I need to be successful? What do I need from a vendor to be successful? I see this in TMS selection just as much as I see it in AI. What do I need from a vendor to be successful? I might need a vendor to help me suss out the business logic. If they think I'm coming to the table with all of the answers, like the deep answers, like, I know how my business works, but, like, really be able to articulate, again, why I might take this 9 p.m. appointment, but other times I might reschedule it. Because this carrier, because this customer, because I missed this load yesterday, blah, blah, all of those things that go into that. If I need somebody to help me suss that out, I need to vet the vendor for how they're going to do that. What does customer success look like? What does implementation look like? What are the activities that you are going to do? How are you going to do this? You know, literally walk me through, just like a job interview. Walk me through a scenario where you did this with someone. Show me this in production. I mean, there is vaporware out there, Chris. Like, I'm not going to pretend that there's not.
No, for sure.
Even though I've been pushing back on you a bit for where the technology is. Like, but okay, walk me through in production. I mean, we have a 9-step technology. Our framework at Metaphora, when we do technology selection for people, it's a 9-step process. There are 9 different areas. Like, we do a technical questionnaire, we do a technical demo, we have people, we give them a use case and have them walk us through in production, like an example of this. Like, there's a lot of things that we do to get to the right answer, but it all starts up front with business requirements gathering at a level of detail that is way more than you think you need, bro. So, it starts with doing the self-discovery.
Oh man, I love that, and I think that's you're so right, Ryan. You need to start with that self discovery. You need to push back, ask questions, actually ask yourself, do we really need this, or is that FOMO starting to set in there, man? But hey, man, I appreciate your time. I promise I won't. It won't be 5 more years unless Chad doesn't open up his wallet and pay for you to come back on.
Yeah.
But dude, how does anybody reach out to you to find out more about what you got going on or what you guys got going on at Metaphora?
Yeah, always just find. I mean, LinkedIn's the best place to find me. I have an X account, but like I can never find myself finding the time or the space to use it. So just find me on LinkedIn, Ryan B. Schreiber. And you can always shoot me an email, Ryan Schreiber at metaphora.net. It's Metaphora with an F, by the way, metaphora.net. And just shoot. Just reach out, shoot me a LinkedIn message, and I'm always happy to chat. I'm always here to help, and or just message Nick Dangles and just tell him you're trying to get to me, because he always likes when people do that. So thanks for having me, bro.
No, absolutely, man. Ryan,
let me give everybody Nick's cell phone number. Let me give everybody Nick's cell phone number real quick. It's 217. No, I'm just kidding.
No, that's funny. Oh, Ryan, thank you so much for your time today. That's going to be it for today, ladies and gentlemen. If you guys can't find Ryan or Metaphora out there, hit me up. I'll gladly put you guys in contact with them. But that's going to be it. As always, if you got value in what you heard, subscribe to the show, you guys. And if you're feeling really ambitious after this one, rank the show on iTunes and Spotify, because if you saw value, your network's going to see value as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon. Today's guest, you guys, I'm really looking forward to speaking with him. As somebody who is getting deeper and deeper inside of how can I do more with less, especially with technology as a founder of a business, and how can I, kind of automate a lot of this stuff out there. And there's so many tools that are at our disposal now. So we're going to talk about that today. I got Mr. Bill Holaday on the show. Bill, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
Oh, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
I'm really looking forward to it. So, Bill, I always start out every single show the same, man. How'd you get your start in freight? What brought you into trucking?
So what brought me into trucking? Yeah, this is a funny story. So, back in, let's call it the late 80s. So I've been around a while. So long time. I was literally working at a bank. Literally there was a change in kind of what they were doing and the direction they were going. I was literally laid off. There was a carrier in town looking for someone to run their IT infrastructure. I knew the hardware. The person who had already left, they would have hired anybody at that point. So I was hired on, didn't even know what a bill of lading was at the time. And now here I am 38 years later. I spent 16 years with the carrier, sales, operations, safety, compliance, the GM at the end, then moved over into a TMS company. So a technology company selling TMS and mobility. I spent about 22 years there, and I've made my way over to EV Technologies not long ago. And so I'm happy to be here. So that's kind of how I got into this. It's sort of like, I know that anybody grows up going, I'm going to be, get into transportation, but once you get into it, it's hard. It just gets in your blood, right? And yeah. I was talking earlier. Even my daughter is a freight broker. I took my kids to work with me during their summer breaks, and they worked at the trucking company, and doing settlements, writing billing, and some things like that. So they had a lot of exposure to the business. So anyway, that's kind of how I got into that. So.
No, I mean, I think transportation is such a vast industry, right? Like there's so many opportunities that are in it. And especially now with, I want to call it a rise in technology, but technology is at the forefront of every single business and industry out there right now. And, so what EBE Technologies, how did that get all started? Kind of like what are your guys' core service competency?
So core services, EBE started back in the 70s, right? And they really kind of reinvented themselves about 25 years ago. So Larry Kerr, president and owner, he started working into the freight business, transportation carriers, they say about 25 years ago. So our core competency is everything transportation. That's our customer base. We probably have a little over 600 customers and all transportation related. Where they got their start was really just scan, retrieval, document scanning, imaging systems, and then integrating those into TMSs. So that's kind of where they got their start. So then over time, they became very good at the OCR piece, character recognition, and learned AI around, the forms and things like that. So that's really where that kind of got started. So, and they kind of really blossomed into this big business for them around, we do so many other things on top of that now. We get into driver services, safety and compliance. We have deep integrations into mobility companies. We have web portal products and services that we do that automatic updates and things like that. So kind of a wide variety of these kind of I'll call point solutions around what you would kind of hook into a TMS, if that makes sense. Or mobility products. Yep.
So, I wanted to, because like it's very timely with it being Driver Appreciation Week out there for a lot of this, because I feel like there's a lot of things of, how can we go out there and honestly, this is the whole purpose of this show is putting best practices out there for people to apply into their business, right? Because it's like, there's no playbook to entrepreneurship. There's no, hey, you started your business, you're going to have everything figured out. But there's a lot of people out there who want to become more efficient, right? Like, I don't know anybody who goes into business with the intent of like, how do I burn all of my capital and crush my dreams within a couple of months, right? Like, I don't know of anybody who's going to do that. And, I look at with where technology is now, and, as somebody who started a freight brokerage, we're trying to pack a larger punch in the market. And I look at it as like with the right technology now, we're able to, right? Like, we're able to go out there, become more efficient. And then for me, it's like, I feel like most young entrepreneurs and young business owners, revenue producing activities are the top of mind, right? Like, I do not have hours a day to waste trying to figure out a lot of stuff, right? Like, my focus is on business development. It's on servicing my current customers. And there's ways behind the scenes where you can automate a lot of the paperwork and a lot of that stuff out there. And, on the driver and the carrier side as well, that's another big time suck out there. I know my dad back in the day when he'd come home from a couple of weeks out on the road, he'd have a stack of receipts and him and my mom going through everything, trip settlements, all of that stuff. And
I remember those days. Yes.
Yeah. And it's like, but it's not too far off from where things still kind of currently are. Bill, there's a lot of people out there who still operate in that capacity.
Yeah, and so I want to tell a story around kind of that just a little bit. So I was thinking about coming on the show and my background, what I've done in industry, and some things like that. And so I was I had some driving time last night coming back from the Intermodal Expo in Long Beach. But I figured out that I've been on site inside of carrier operations over 1,000 different trucking companies over the course of my career. So I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people. And I was kind of looking at the map. I've been down to Guatemala. I've been up to Prudhoe Bay, Mexico, of course, Canada, US. But literally, and I think that's a low estimate. If I had to go actually count it, it's probably north of 1,200 over the course of the last 23 years or so. And I kind of went back to like, what were some of the meaningful conversations that I had around, just in general with these owners and these people operating these companies. And one, out of all of those visits, out of all of them, over 1,000, one comes to mind and way ahead of all of the others. And it really is a president and owner of a trucking company. They're about 1,400 trucks, probably 4,000 trailers. But he's also a race car driver. And what he does, because everyone's focused on the top down, right? They're like, okay, my insurance, my trade cycle, my deadhead, my loaded miles, my empty miles, how do I purchase fuel? Everybody's doing that, right? And you have to be good at that. And that's, we're talking about cost, right? So that's, you have to know how to do that and, and be good at it. But let's turn that upside down for a minute. Let's start at not the bottom, but if you turn it upside down and think about that, and where I'm going with this, his commentary around this was take it from the general ledger and look at it from that point back up. And so, which was very interesting. In his mind, he said, look, Bill, he goes, if I can increase productivity or save 0.1% with one small move or process change in my operation, and he relates that to the race car, right? He goes, all I do is one small minor tweak. That could be the difference of winning and losing, right? Yeah. So in his mind, he's like, okay, look, if it's 0.1 of 1%, I do that 10 times, I'm at 1%. I do it 100 times, I'm at 10%. And he's like, those are huge dollars if you think about it in those terms. And I'll never forget that conversation because he was hyper focused on the small things. The big things are, table stakes, right? Okay, you have to be good at those things, but start from the GL, work your way back up, considering the customer, right? That's got to be paramount in your decisions. But he felt like that was his advantage. He goes, they spend time on the little things to make them a big thing, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. And that's one thing that my, I have a couple of friends that are CFOs out there, and my CPA said that to me in my business. They've all alluded to pay attention to the small expenditures that you don't notice, right? And I feel like that's one of those things inside of, whether you're, paying for some service out there as a business owner, it's $40 here, $80 there. You don't notice it, right? Because it gets buried by your $1,000 fuel purchase and stuff like that.
Right.
It's the death by 1,000 cuts analogy that I think is perfectly applicable here. And, I want to talk though about that, like with those non-fuel operating costs that are like crushing carriers out there right now. Where do you see some of those biggest cost strains in relation to like automation and where it can solve?
Yeah, great question. So I'll give you an example. We just signed up a customer. I'll back up a second around time to value, and just your time in general. I mean, if I can come in and say, look, I can save you 3 hours a day. Okay, how meaningful is that? So you're like, that's 3 hours. But honestly, if someone showed up today and said, look, I can automate 3 hours of your day, I would take that in a heartbeat, right? I mean, think about the time back. But and of course, it's not for everybody, right? It's more of the tasks that are kind of, we'll call them mundane or repetitive, that we can automate. But those are big, right? So, the time savings, we've taken a true LTLer, City P&D, hub and spoke, 14 terminals. We're going to roll out our driver app. We're going to scan the paperwork. We're going to turn that paperwork into bona fide orders before the paper actually gets back to the terminal, right? So those are actually like a 204 going into the system ahead of time. So something like that, those guys are going to save on an annual basis, roughly across the 14 terminals, about 10,000 hours a year. All of a sudden that 10 hours, that 20 hours, and people are like, oh, how meaningful is it? Think about that. That's incredibly meaningful. It's like, those are big numbers. Now that's not for everybody, of course. And it's a good example, but some are smaller, but the accuracy of the data, how important is that, right? That's super important, as you know, right? Getting the freight bill out correctly, right? The right bill to the right customer, and billed correctly. Getting the driver's pay correct. The driver pay it's one of the biggest things, because come payday, the driver knows exactly to the penny, right, what they should be getting paid, right? Yeah. And that's wrong. You're going to hear about it, right? And all of a sudden you've got a problem with your drivers if you don't do that correctly. So, and pay it on time, right? There's all those things that we automate the entire process, right? So it's ensuring a better customer relationship, right? Because we're got a better connection to the customer. We're deeply integrated with them. We have a better relationship with the driver because we're more accurate, like in their pay and things like that. And so, those are some things that we're doing that makes our customers' relationship with their customer better.
Yeah, no, I was just talking about this on a show here recently where I would argue your ability to properly invoice your customers, whether you're a carrier or a broker, is more important than your ability to service them at the end of the day. Because like, if you look at it from an overarching like side effects of this, if you can't bill somebody properly, yes, they can't pay you on time, slow payments will kill most businesses, right? Like it's a very well-known fact. Like, I don't know the exact percentage, but it's a very high percentage of businesses are within 30 days of going out of business every single month due to cash flow constraints. So it's like with these slow billing cycles that come up, and a lot of people struggling with them because they can't invoice their customers properly, for one example, how can automation help, maybe cut invoice times, improve cash flows and stuff like that?
Yeah, so we're very good at that. So I'll give you an example. So in our driver app, if I've got a driver out, doing their deliveries, whether it's one drop or multiple drops, what they do at the end of the trip, scan the paperwork, right? And once we scan the paperwork at the end of the trip, we can literally send out a freight bill within 5-10 minutes of that delivery. And we're checking the paperwork, we're making sure everything that's required is there, the driver trip sheet, the bill of lading, the signed POD, we're looking for signatures, all those things. But if we get the green light that those are all good and we've validated that those are good, we can send the freight bill out right then and there. So literally right there, and accurately feed that back into the TMS, the billing goes out, it's good to go. So we're very good at that. And things like in a manual world where we have a customer that their drivers come back with a manual trip sheet that what they did all day, right? Kind of an out and back, and their turn all day is an example where, hey, they come back to the office at the end of the shift, they give someone a piece of paper, and now they got to go key all this in. But we can actually scan that document and just turn that into 204s, bring those into the TMS, and handle it that way. So we can automate that process as well. So we can do the billing as quickly as anybody really wants to. So there's no limitation. The only thing would be is, hey, if we find an exception or if there's something missing, right, that'll go into a hold queue. Someone needs to look at that. But otherwise, the freight bill's going out immediately.
Mm-hmm. So, I want to switch to, because like when people hear there's so many buzzwords out there right now, Bill, within technology, so it's like, you hear about RPA. So, for those of you who are listening who do not know what an RPA is, robotic process automation. I look at it and I hear that. And again, I look at myself as a small business owner, and it's like, what are some of these things? Like, where could I put an RPA to automate my workflows, right? Like, what can I do to build that up? And I'm looking at it from a driver's perspective as well. And you were talking about the trip settlements and all of that. How are RPAs helping with like the manual busy work that most drivers and small fleets are dealing with on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so what we run into a lot is our customers have to go and update a web portal. Is a great example, right? They have to upload paperwork, they might have to download something, they have to give status updates. And this goes back to, may even have an effect on their scorecard with their customer, right? If this isn't done timely. But those things we can completely automate. So we've run into folks that have a team of maybe 3 or 4 people that are, full-time FTEs that's what they do all day long. We can literally automate that entire function as an example. So if you're doing CAS logistics or things like that, but we can go to these web portals, whether they're status updates, tendering orders, updating orders, pulling orders back in, bringing them into the TMS. We can do all of that. We can take, like I said, manual paperwork, inbound emails, spreadsheet, any of those things. We can ingest those into the EB system, and we could turn those into 204s and make those a bona fide order in a TMS. And where that kind of comes in, what's very helpful, especially I'll focus on the LTL world for just a minute. If we're scanning those documents as we do the pickups, we can turn those into orders immediately, and then the terminal can start pre-planning the outbound while the driver's out doing the pickups. In a different world, they don't know anything about the pickup yet back at the terminal, so they can't pre-plan anything, right? So they could build those trailers out within maybe 6-7 hours ahead of schedule versus the paperwork getting delivered at the dock, and then they pre-plan to do that.
How has some of this stuff transitioned into like driver retention, right? Because I feel like that is one side of this industry that isn't talked about a lot. Is like, how are we out there working to make the drivers' lives easier? Whether you're a fleet owner or you're building your fleet up, everybody that I know of that owns a trucking company at any given moment, Bill, are going to be like, yeah, we're always looking for drivers. We're always looking for drivers. We're always looking to do that. But it's like, I look at it as, it's like, how are some of these tools going to improve the driver experience? Because you brought up money earlier, and that is like, that kills, I would say, like 99% of employees to employers, the money, right? If you mess with their money, they're going to walk, right?
Don't mess with the money ever.
How are automating like settlements and all of this stuff? How is that leading to a higher retention rate?
Yeah, so as we process the paperwork with the app, right, that feeds back into the TMS. We're figuring out what settlement should be, or the driver pay, right, whether it's an owner-operator, carrier, or a company driver, right? That all gets automated, ties back into the system, right? So we know exactly what to expect. Like say the carrier invoice as an example. So let's say it's an outside carrier. We know exactly what we should be paying them. They should know exactly what to get paid, right? We can validate that, right? It falls in like an exception queue because it's out of compliance with, a threshold of, maybe let's call it 2 or 3%, whatever it might be, right? So we can take care of that as well. So, but for the driver themselves, if they're looking for something easy, right? They don't want some complicated app. I got to log into this app. I got to look in this one. I got to do this. We have deep links into a number of different mobility platforms. And so we're able to get into these different systems and tie into the devices they're using today for their ELDs, right? So it's like a one sign-on for all, but also it's ease of use, right? So I don't know if you've ever used an app. I'll give you an example. It's not a driver example, but my wife had to go to a different dentist recently, and they sent her this link to an app. She had to fill all this information out, and she was just fit to be tied because it just wasn't user friendly, right? It was just she finally handed it to me. Hey, can you do this for me? Like, they just want it to be easy, and that's what we've done, right? It has to be easy, or they won't use it. And then we tie that back into our recruiting piece, right? Where we've had a database of over, I think it was 3 million drivers. If we've seen them before and they're applying for any of our customers in the past that use our system, then it's just the name, put it in, and we were able to do that. We can take their cards, upload those, so we can autofill some of those things in. It's just easier, right? So they just want easy. They don't want to be bothered. They want to drive the truck. They want to deliver the freight, because what's important to them is getting there on time, getting there safely, right? No damage, right? And all this other stuff is, we kind of put it on the drivers, so it's got to be easy.
Yeah, again, I'm not a driver. I'm not speaking for drivers, but my dad was a driver, and I know his personality. I know how he was. And that is it. Like, he didn't want to be bothered with any of this at the end of the day, Bill. He wanted to drive. That was it, right? And then, I look at it is, and I've said this on the show multiple times in the past is, a lot of these, companies out there, like they can't shut their business down for a week to go to a conference to learn about a lot of this new stuff, right? That's out there because, contrary to what a lot of people think, like, it is an investment to go to a conference, and there has to be an ROI for your time. And especially if you're a owner operator or you own a small business, like, you're literally shutting your stuff down. You're running on a skeleton crew for a few days there. So it's like, when we're looking at this and, the driver piece, the hiring, the onboarding, the recruiting, all of that, that's a process out there. So it's like, and you were talking about some of those things. So it's like, is there it sounds like there's a driver piece here where drivers can go in, they can have all of their, medical records and, CDL verification, all of that stuff can be on there. Is that in a portal where people can go in, start using a lot of that?
The mobile app, in a portal, we can do all of that. So everything from, applicant tracking, the DQ files, as you kind of bring that driver along through the recruiting process, that's all kind of automated. We have drip marketing to reach back out to the drivers. Like, okay, we haven't heard from you in a week. I thought we were, progressing here as we recruit you, right? Here's what we're going to do. We can do it by regions. We can do by state. You kind of define that. But yeah, so the key ultimately is the ease of use for the driver to use those tools, right? And if it's not easy, they're not going to use it. We know that, right?
So, down effects of this, right? Hiring the wrong driver. Like, there's been a lot of highly publicized things here as of late about, safety, compliance, and a lot of that stuff. And, there's real consequences if you hire the wrong drivers and stuff like that out there. But, safety and compliance is another thing. And, every time I see a lot of this stuff that comes about, Bill, I'm like, it seems like it's a reaction in the moment, right? And it's like, the outsiders looking in is kind of like, how did we get here? Like, that's a lot of those things. When I see a lot of this stuff, I don't necessarily blame the incident. I blame the oversights that led to put somebody in that position to make that mistake, right? And it feels like it with safety and compliance is more times than not, once you start seeing some of these carriers that are out there, there was a clear lack that led to this point, right? So it's like, how are you guys out there, and how do you see automation help carriers stay more, up to date with all of their safety and compliance process? Because that's going to ultimately lead to lower insurance, and insurance is a whole other cost suck for most carriers.
So not a lot of people know this about EB, but what we've done is, and I mentioned deep links into mobility products, right? The mobility platforms of the world, without naming all of them, and camera systems, right? So what we've done is, like, I'll go back to the deep links into these products. We were able to extract all that information about the ELD, the hours of service, the driver behavior from the cameras, all of this. So, and where we're really good is if there's we'll call it a mixed fleet. So in other words, if I've got a fleet that's got two types of telematics and maybe two types of cameras, as an example, maybe there was a merger, right? So now they've got, all this technology, they're trying to figure out how do we combine it, right? We're able to bring that into one pane of glass for the fleet manager and the safety manager to view. And then we look at the driver behaviors. Is there anything that's concerning to us, right? And then we can pull them aside and have or bring that to the attention of the safety manager. Say, look, here's some things that you need to be aware of that's happening with these particular drivers, and maybe they need to. We'll send them some educational material or bring them into the terminal, things like that. But we're very good at capturing that information. And I'll go back to the one pane of glass that we're able to present to the fleet managers and the safety managers.
Yeah,
which is a lot of people don't know that we do that and find that interesting, concerning we don't have an ELD or we're not a mobility company, right?
No, I look at it I think if there's one underlying thing across every industry, when it comes to technology and everything else, Bill, is like, this is just going to replace us, right? Like, this is going to replace people. All of a sudden, nobody's going to have jobs and everything else. But like, for me, everything you're describing here, this just makes a company more dialed in, right? Like, this is going to make you better at your job. How many safety managers, again, I would argue that probably everybody you would interview for this would be like, oh, I have so much going on, this is why it's not done. Well, this is why a tool keeps you, so like because you can't have I forgot to do that moment when you're getting in a deposition. Like if you're a safety manager and you're the unfortunate fatality or accident that happens out there, you cannot say we don't have that, right? The lawyers they're gonna bury you for that, right? So it's like, I look at a lot of what you're describing out here. This just makes you a more well-rounded company, and like, this is just going to keep you stay on task, keep you up to date, because again, I like it's never a matter if it's when you are in this position. You're going to be in a position, you're going to be on the unfortunate end of a denied insurance claim or a lawsuit, and then that could potentially bury your dream, your business, put tons of people out of work way faster than an RPA could.
Yeah, we help mitigate that, right, with this tool set, right? And so that's part of what we offer. And so this really comes from, hey, what do the customers want? EB is listen to their customers, from the very beginning, and these are the things that kind of came from that. And I think we have close to 30 different solutions that we offer that, around safety compliance, or it's on the RPA AI stuff. So it's we're doing a lot in that area, and mitigation of the risk is a big one, right?
Mm-hmm. No, and I think, like, from my perspective, it's like there's always going to be something that's going to come up, right? And you need to just like, I'm really going through, I don't want to call it like an identity crisis or anything like that, but like, I'm going through this phase in business, Bill, where it's like, we talk about the freight market being down. We talk about like, there's always something, and then everybody's always looking to blame somebody else. And I'm just at this kind of like reflective part of my journey of like, it's all on me. At the end of the day, I have to figure this out, right? Like, I can't look anybody else in the eye and be like, oh, it's a bad freight market, that's why I'm going out. No, I'm not going out of business. I'm going to figure it out, right? And I look at it with where technology is today. Like, there are so many tools that are out there that help you way more than work against you. And you have to go out there and you have to find them. You have to find those blind spots in your businesses. And the way that I see it, man, some of this technology is way cheaper than a consultant. Like a consultant to come in and bill you hundreds of thousands of dollars to tell you what an RPA can probably tell you for $20.
And you bring up a really good point. We have such deep domain knowledge at EBE. It's incredible, right? 20 plus years of experience with a lot of the folks that are there. We got some industry veterans that just arrived. So we've got a really nice mix of people there. And it feels kind of, honestly, a little bit as they've been in business over 50 years, but it's kind of a startup vibe to it, where we're doing all this stuff. It's point solutions. We're helping all these carriers with these big giant TMSs kind of extend the life of their TMS, right? With these point solutions, adding on some functionality that they've never had before. So, because the freight's down, right? People are watching every penny. At some point they may have a 25-year-old TMS, but they're not ready to make that move yet. They got to wait. It might be 3 or 4 years. But in the meantime, we can help them extend the life of what they're doing with their current solutions.
Bill, what is something that you think people should be on the lookout for in regards to tech and freight? Or maybe what's one thing, as we're wrapping up here, that you wish more people were aware of when they're like vetting possible vendors out there to hire for their company?
Well, I would say that, because I've been doing this a long time, TMS and point solutions, it's really, when you're looking at people and solutions, my advice is, look, you've got to make them prove they can do it, right? A lot of people go around talking about what they can do. There's an old saying, we call it vaporware, right? You've got to be able to ask those people, prove to me that you can do this, show me that you can do it, and truly walk me through the process, right? And maybe to the point of, hey, take my data and show me how that works. I need to know. Because what I've learned very recently is a lot of people call them kind of burn victims out in the market, where this new technology pops up, and we can do this, this, and this, but can they really do it? So my advice is really, do your due diligence, make them prove they can absolutely do that, right? And so that's probably the best advice I can give folks who are out shopping for new technology, because there's a lot of talk going on right now, but it's really, it's delivering the freight, it's getting the bills out, it's getting the drivers paid, right? That's and safely, right? So those are the important factors. And then streamlining the back office with this automation, right? These are really good things.
No, perfect. Bill, I appreciate your time today. How does anybody reach out to you to find out more about what you guys have going on?
Yeah, you can just find my LinkedIn, Bill Holaday, EBE, or just hit our website, or Bill H at ebe-inc.com.
Perfect. Sounds good, Bill. Bill, thank you so much for joining me. That's going to be it for today, ladies and gentlemen. As always, if you got value in what you heard, subscribe to the show, you guys. And if you're feeling ambitious after this one, which you should be, rank the show on iTunes and Spotify, because if you saw value, your network's going to see value as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Came back with a bang, window down, yelling out money, anything. Hey, ooh, got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when I'm getting to the back. Hey.